Hi! Should you move because of climate change? Boy, this is a real tough one. Part of the reason is because we don't know what climate change is going to do. But one thing we know for sure is the Arctic, Antarctic ice that we don't expect has melted. Way beyond predictions. So, the answer is, if you live on the water, yes, you better move. But there's other considerations. Now, I've been tracking for about 20 years with Guy McPherson, Nature Bats Last, or with John Overpeck. He goes by Peck Overpeck, and all kinds of different online climate change people. And in general, moving is a crapshoot. It's a crapshoot. I mean, unless you live on the water, moving is a crap. Unless you live on an island, and if you live on an island, you should have moved already. That's a problem. That's a big problem. Because if the water were to rise 8, 10, 12 feet, the different predictions that I've heard, that would be a real problem. Because, 3 meters? 4 meters? Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of water. And I've been in a flood before. It's not something you want to do. But there's more than just move about climate change. Should you change your lifestyle? Is there something you should do differently? How should you look at what you've thought about climate change? What should you consider? I would say you don't consider moving to either end of the poles, but you knew that because nobody lives there anyway. Greenland probably isn't a real good idea, or Iceland. Actually, now there's lots of predictions that because of AMOC, and I can't tell you exactly what that stands for because it's way over my head. I am not a weather person. I learned to fly and I learned how to read what's going on during the day when I can see it, but AMOC has to do with the way the water is moving around the earth and the fact that it appears that it's changing. And if it doesn't bring the cool to the warm areas and the warm to the cool areas as it has in the past, the whole European area is going to be very cold. Yet, so much of what's happening is getting warmer. So, again, I say, it's a crapshoot. But it has to be what your impression is. You know, if you're following all the different things that are going on, you may want to, let's say, you have a great big house on a huge piece of land. You may want to sell it all, put yourself in a condo, and travel the world. Use all the money from selling the house and land and travel the world. Part of the advice that I keep getting is do what you really enjoy while you can. Because we really don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know when it's going to happen. All we do know is that originally when they started talking to us about this, it was 2100. Then it was 2050. And I've heard a lot of people say 2035 now. There's going to be major changes. It's really hard to say, but if you're happy with where you are, and there's no pressing issue like the water coming in, you might want to stay there. However, another way to look at it, when we move, we have an opportunity to transition ourselves. Some people move overseas to have a chance to change their whole brand. They change their name. they change their background. They make up a whole new story, and they're a whole new person. Not me, but some people do that. And it's amusing, yes, and if that's what they want to do, well, as long as they're not hurting anybody, I don't see anything wrong with it. Call themselves periwinkle or whatever. There's a lot of things to think about. When you move, for one thing, I have a dog here who's trying to make a bed out of a miniature bamboo. You may not want to leave your animals. Maybe you've got horses. Maybe you've got a giraffe. I don't know, a rhino. Whatever you have, you may have to consider, can you take your animals? That may be a big deal for you, and it may be a nothing for you. It's a big deal for me. I'm really a dog person. And I've gotten really attached to the cat. It's just the strangest thing. She's been with us for 10 years. It's about time. I've gotten really, really attached to the cat. She's finally started to speak to me in a language I can understand. But it's got to be what you understand, what you want. If I said to you, I am absolutely sure you've got no more than 3 years left before climate change is just going to destroy everything, what would you do? I mean, questions like that make a lot more sense. Do you have food put away where you are now? Is it taking space, and have you planned it out, and those sort of things? Because some people do. We do. I certainly, as a military kid, I was always taught to have backup food because you never knew where you were going to be shipped off to or what was going to happen. Even though it weighs, that it's not the same as being a civilian and having to move something. When you're a military kid, it gets moved. Period. That's all there is to it. But and what would you save? That's another good question. It's got to be something you like. If you don't like white rice, don't save it. If you only like lentils and you don't care for beans or brown rice, don't save it. Figure whatever you put away, find out how it should be put away. It's not as simple as just putting a plastic bag on the shelf. You have to really know what you're doing. And the Mormons, and there's other groups, especially religious groups, who have lots of free advice on what you want to put away. One of the things you might consider putting away, even if you don't put anything else away, is bottles of water. We just don't know what is going to happen with water. In most places, we have no idea. So having 2, 3, 5-gallon jugs of drinking water isn't a bad idea. But, stick it under your bed, put it back in the closet. Just have some water. I mean, I lived in Florida for years. And I know it sounds funny, but every time there was a tornado, or I'm not a tornado, a hurricane coming, we would have to fill the tub. That was the thing that everybody did. They filled the tub. But what happens if the water line is broken before you fill the tub? And what happens if there's no gas or electricity to heat the water? If you've got 2 or 3 bottles of water that's protected, safe, and closed up and is properly bottled, you should be fine. You should have some water for a while. Those are some of the questions you have to ask. And where do you want to be? Do you have community around you, or do you want to move someplace where there's community? Everybody says, anybody who's in the business of paying attention to what may or may not happen is saying you should be around community. You should be around people who are aware of what's happening and who want to be working together, who feel a connection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That may be very important to you. Now, we don't here. We live in Ecuador because of my husband's health. And everybody around here speaks Spanish. They're sweethearts, but they speak Spanish. So I can't really talk to them. Of course, I can't talk to them on a philosophical level anyway, because they're subsistence farmers. So it's all about your decision. But for me, I've got enormous gardens. So I'm not concerned about having food. There'll be food. And I've also got rice and lentils both put away. So there you go. You have to make those decisions. You have to really look. And you have to think about your kids. And if you've got pets, you got to think about your pets. Do you have food for them? Have you put something back? So in case you can't, there's a landslide or There's been so much rain. We had so much rain here that it went under the asphalt and buckled it up last spring. When I asked McPherson about Ecuador, he said it's not going to get hotter, but it's going to get a lot wetter. Well, it has. Ever since he told me that, it has. So that's something you have to worry about. But on the other hand, we have a dry season. So I've got a big water tank sitting here, hooked up to make sure I can take care of the gardens. Your choices are so broad and so personal. Maybe your spouse doesn't believe in climate change. That's possible. If your spouse doesn't believe in climate change and you do, then you got a different problem. Because if you want to put something away, your spouse is probably going to either say no, or they're going to say you're nuts. Go ahead and do what you want, but you're nuts. You know, that kind of thing. Or his family. Maybe both of you believe in climate change and his family doesn't. And they suddenly discover that you've put up, let's say, 6 gallons of lentils. You might start a family feud. It sounds funny, but those are all real concerns. They really are. And do you know how to grow things? Could you move somewhere where the climate remained viable for growing things? Could you grow things? Do you know how to plant? Do you know how to keep the bugs away? Do you know how to adjust for whether it's a rainy season or the dry season? Do you know how to till and take care of the land around the plants? Do you know what plants will grow in the area? I've been trying to grow rhubarb here for I don't know how long, and I haven't had any luck at all. Maybe, and of course I don't always say rhubarb in Spanish, and so often the names of vegetables are so far off that it's real hard to tell. So anyway, what do you want to eat, and would it grow where you were going to go? And do you want meat? Oh boy, then you got a real problem. You got to have a cow, or you got to have a goat, or you got to at least have chickens, or maybe fish. You got to have a fish pond. All those different kinds of questions have to be answered before you can really say, should I move because of climate change? Or should I think about it? Or do I want to transition my life? Am I looking for a way out from where I am now, what I'm doing now, what kind of work I'm in, whatever. And some people say that, yeah, I'm ready for a transition. I don't want to do my job anymore as a caregiver or a safety guard or somebody who sells bread on the corner store. I don't know what it might be. Whatever it might be. Maybe you want to go back to school and become a nurse and be available for your community. You know, it's really hard to give people advice other than encouraging. I so encourage you to keep paying attention to the planet. I'm a deep ecologist. My biggest concern is what's happening with the planet. Is the planet going to be viable for us? Is the planet going to be able to provide us with the air we need and the water we need? And is there enough room on this planet for how many people there may be under what circumstances? And where would people go if something happened in one area and not an area? And what areas would be most hit by having people move in? And where people couldn't grow vegetables and then they would move from that place. And there's so many questions. And there's so much outside anxiety, especially right now, where we're not really sure what many of the leaders around the world have got in mind. And we're also not sure of the supply chains and how those are going to be working in the future. I mean, the future is always a crystal ball. It really is. You don't know what you might be dealing with until the time comes. And then, of course, it's too late. And that's why insider trading and things like that are considered illegal, because people are like little lemmings. They want to run to what works, and then they'll run in a different direction and run in a third direction. And what you really want is what you want and not what other people want. And you may decide that living next to the water is your be-all and end-all. If you can't do that, you don't want to do anything. You're either going to stay where you are, or you're going to move higher up, where you can look down and still see the water. Those are your decisions, and they're tough ones. There's no easy answer. The only answer I can definitively give you is that everything in life changes. We're constantly having to adapt to change. It's just the way it is in our society. This modern age, we constantly have to adapt. Fortunately, we have electronics that allow us to keep in touch, get the latest information, maybe, unless somebody's lying, then you're not. So it's really wise to keep your finger on the pulse of many different people, many different outlets, many different reports, so that you can make an informed decision. And it's not all bad. I mean, my husband and I moved here because of my husband's health, and we are so glad we did. It's just, we can grow around the whole calendar, and hopefully that will continue. But we don't know. But we are really high. We're on the top of a mountain. The whole city is down there below us. I don't know if you can see that. You see the city is down there. You see the city down there? There's lots of houses, and over there there's the church. There's just lots of things below us. So we feel like we don't have to be concerned about water, or coming up to the edge. That's probably not going to happen. But there could be a lot of other things happen. Maybe there's no water for. We have something called canal water here, which is the irrigation water. It hasn't been treated. The other water hasn't been treated either, but it goes through several filters before it goes in our mouth. But there are so many variables. And where you live is really important as far as looking at the politics. You got to check that out too. You don't want to put yourself, in a place where you're dealing with upsetting politics. So, although I teased you with a title that made you think I knew something, I do. I know a lot because I've studied so much. What I know is that climate change is real. There's a lot of things happening. There's been a lot of areas where there's been changes that they haven't reported because in general, people are afraid of climate change. They want to ignore it. They want to pretend it doesn't exist. That's why, as an advocate since 1962, I'm frustrated. I want people to pay attention to our Earth. I want people to notice the fact that if we don't have air to breathe, we're gone quick. If we don't have water, we'll last a little bit longer, but not much longer. Because we had it for ourselves, and we have to have it for the plants. So I don't have the answers, but I do have the questions that you should ask yourself before you make a decision. And if you want reminders, I have art down below. My nonprofit has a website with the art on it for the retirement for two of us who are over 75. It's another lady and myself that are artists. We'd love to have you take a look by. My work is fiber work. Her work is painting. And just reminders of what needs to be done to keep the earth safe for all of us. I'd love it if you'd look at it. Thank you for being here, and if you have any questions, just ask me down in the comments. I'll get back to you. No worries. Thank you.